Imagine telling your computer, plan a dinner party for 6 people on Friday, accommodate 2 vegans, buy the groceries, schedule the delivery, and send out the calendar invites.
Right.
And then you just walk away. You know, you don't click through menus, you don't open 5 different apps, you just give the command and it happens.
Yeah, it just gets it done.
Welcome to the Deep Dive Learner. If you felt like the ground has been shifting under your feet in 2026, you are not crazy. Today, we are unpacking a massive fundamental rewiring of how work actually gets done.
Absolutely.
Because AI is no longer just a tool you operate, right? It is a stack that you manage. We're talking about the shift from reactive assistants to autonomous AI crews that handle entire end-to-end workflows.
It really is a complete paradigm shift. And our mission today is to cut through all the heavy tech jargon and really look under the hood of these autonomous systems.
Yeah, because there's a lot of jargon out there right now.
Yeah, well, tons of it. But we are going to explore exactly how they operate, the mechanics behind these unprecedented productivity gains we're seeing in the data, and, I think just as importantly, the hidden traps. You know, the implementation nightmares that are catching companies completely off guard.
I love that. So let's set a mental model for the listener right out of the gate. Think about the difference between a microwave and a personal chef.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Right. Up until about a year ago, AI was basically a really impressive microwave. You had to know exactly what you wanted, put the food in, push the exact right sequence of buttons, and wait for that one specific isolated task to finish.
Yep.
And if you pushed the wrong button or left out a step, you got a frozen burrito.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Because the output was entirely dependent on your step-by-step supervision.
Okay.
I mean, if you didn't hold his hand, it did nothing.
Exactly. But now we're moving to the personal chef model. You don't push buttons, you just say what you want the final outcome to be.
Right, you give it a goal.
Yeah, and the chef, the autonomous AI plans the menu, checks the pantry, buys the missing ingredients, cooks the meal, serves it, and cleans up. It orchestrates the entire flow.
That is the perfect framing. And to understand the mechanics of why this is such a big deal right now, we really have to look at the leap from 2025 to 2026.
It's had a crazy year.
It has. Last year was the era of the individual assistant, but now we have firmly entered what the industry calls the agentic era.
Agentic. Okay, let's break that down for the listener. What is the actual mechanical difference there? Like, what is an autonomous agent doing today that a standard chatbot couldn't do 12 months ago?
So it boils down to 4 distinct capabilities operating in a loop. Perceiving, reasoning, using tools, and acting.
Okay, walk me through those.
Sure. So an autonomous agent perceives its environment, meaning it ingests data, context, and external requests. Then it reasons about its goals.
Which is new, right?
Very new. It doesn't just predict the next word in a sentence like an old chatbot. It actually creates a dynamic plan. It says, to achieve X, I need to do Y and Z. And then, and this is the massive differentiator here, it proactively uses tools.
Wait, when you say tools, you mean like software programs?
Exactly. It can ping an API to pull live weather data, query a secure internal database, or literally open a web browser and navigate a website just like a human user would.
That is wild.
Yeah. And finally, it acts on those steps, evaluates the result, and if it hits an error, it recalculates and tries again.
And the adoption rate for this is just staggering. I mean, looking at the Gartner data we have, they are projecting that by the end of this year, 2026, 40% of enterprise applications will incorporate these task-specific AI agents.
Yeah, put that into context for a second. In 2025, that number was less than 5%.
5%.
Going from under 5% to 40% in a single calendar year is one of the most aggressive enterprise adoption curves we have ever seen. I mean, it proves that the market has recognized this isn't just a gimmick.
I have to pause you there, though, and push back a little because I know what a lot of people listening are probably thinking.
Okay, let's hear it.
Haven't we had basic automations for years? I mean, software where you set up triggers, like if an email comes in with this subject line, then download the attachment to this folder.
Right, the classic rules-based stuff.
Yeah. So what makes this quote-unquote reasoning about goals fundamentally different from just setting up a really long, complicated sequence of automated rules?
It is a great question. And the difference comes down to deterministic logic versus probabilistic reasoning.
Okay, unpack that.
Well, traditional automation, your standard if this then that software is deterministic. It runs on a fixed, rigid track.
Like a train on rails.
Exactly like a train on rails. And if step B on that track is broken or the data format changes even slightly, the train derails. The whole automation crashes, it throws an error code, and it just waits for a human to come fix it. It has zero capacity to improvise. But an autonomous agent, on the other hand, is probabilistic. It understands the goal of the task, not just the hard-coded steps.
So if I set up like an old school web scraper to pull pricing data from a competitor's website, and that competitor redesigns their web page so the price button is on the left instead of the right.
Right. The old scraper breaks.
Yeah, the deterministic scraper just fails. It goes completely blind.
Exactly. But a probabilistic agent hits that same roadblock, stops, analyzes the error, and says, okay, the button isn't where I expected it to be.
Well,
Let me read the source code of the new page, identify the new location of the pricing data, and click there instead. It literally adjusts its own path to reach the goal.
that is wild. It's essentially software that can troubleshoot itself in real time.
Yeah.
But let's dig into the architecture here because it gets even more interesting. We aren't just talking about one giant, omnipotent AI doing all of this, are we?
No, not at all.
The real power is coming from multi-agent systems. So why do we need a crew of agents? If the AI is so smart, why can't my one personal chef just do everything?
Well, because in complex enterprise environments, specialization is drastically more efficient. I mean, if you ask one monolithic AI model to juggle a massive context, say, researching a client, formatting a legal document, and checking compliance protocols simultaneously, it gets overwhelmed.
It loses focus.
Right, it loses the thread. So instead, you create a system where agents specialize.
Okay, walk me through how that actually looks in practice for a business.
Imagine you need to put together a highly sensitive client brief. In a multi-agent workflow, you have an orchestrator agent.
Okay.
You give the orchestrator the prompt. The orchestrator then delegates. It sends a specialized researcher agent to cross-reference your internal CRMs.
Got it.
Once that data is gathered, it doesn't just hand it to you. It hands it to a compliance agent, whose entire existence is just checking data against company privacy rules to ensure no confidential info is leaked.
Oh, wow.
And then once cleared, an executor agent drafts the email, and you, the human, just review the final draft.
I really love this concept. It genuinely makes me think of a classic movie heist crew.
Yeah, a heist crew.
You know, you've got the mastermind, the hacker, the safecracker, and the muscle. They all have highly specific jobs. Like, the hacker isn't trying to punch through the vault door, and the muscle isn't trying to bypass the firewall.
Right.
The orchestrator is the mastermind pulling all the strings.
That analogy actually explains a very technical mechanism behind why these systems work so well. It has to do with something called the context window.
Oh, okay, unpack that for us.
So a context window is basically the AI's short-term memory. It's how much information it can hold in its head at one time. In your heist crew, if one mastermind tries to do the whole heist alone, they get overwhelmed by the variables.
Sure, the camera angles, the vault codes, the guard schedules.
Exactly. Their context window gets cluttered. In AI terms, when that window gets cluttered with too many competing instructions, the AI starts to hallucinate. It makes things up because it lost track of the facts.
Oh, that makes total sense. So if the hacker only has to think about the firewall, their focus is perfectly narrow.
Exactly. By dividing the labor in a multi-agent system, each agent has a pristine, narrow context window. The researcher only thinks about finding data. The compliance agent only thinks about rules.
Wow.
And because of that narrow focus, multi-agent systems actually reduce AI hallucinations dramatically. They act as a system of checks and balances.
Like they double check each other.
Yeah. Before the final document is drafted, a specialized critic agent might evaluate the researcher's work.
Yeah.
If it spots an unsupported claim, it kicks it back to the researcher to fix. They collaborate and check each other's work before a human ever sees it.
And how are they communicating? I mean, they aren't just chatting with each other in English, right?
Right. Under the hood, they're passing structured data packets, like JSON files.
Okay.
The researcher compiles the data into a very specific machine-readable format, so the compliance agent knows exactly what variables to check without having to parse conversational text. It's highly structured, lightning-fast communication.
Let's talk about the hard numbers. Because earlier you mentioned massive productivity gains, and I want to look at the data.
Let's do it.
MIT and BCG put out research showing a 39% to 49% productivity gain in programming tasks with no loss in quality. I mean, that's nearly 50% faster coding.
Yes, and that is just the baseline for isolated tasks. When organizations actually redesign their entire processes around these agents, the studies show up to a 2x to 10x improvement in efficiency.
Okay, hold on. I have to call a timeout right here.
Sure.
10 times improvement. That sounds like absolute vendor marketing
It
fluff.
does sound crazy.
Is a 10x gain actually happening in reality, or is that just what tech startups are putting on their pitch decks? Because I struggle to see how an established company gets 1,000% more efficient just by adding agents.
Well, it sounds absurd until you look at where the wasted time actually lives in a legacy company. The 10x gain doesn't come from the AI typing 10 times faster than a human. It comes from eliminating the dead space between tasks.
The dead space, okay, give me an example.
Think about an approval process. A human finishes a report and emails it to compliance. Compliance takes 3 days to open the email. They find an error, send it back.
Right.
The original human is on vacation, so it sits for a week. That process takes 10 days.
Ah, and the multi-agent system does that entire back and forth loop in, what, 3 seconds?
Exactly. The latency between handoffs drops to absolute zero. That is how you get exponential gains. McKinsey and PwC are reporting that 66% of companies adopting agents are already seeing measurable hard dollar improvements.
Wow.
And Capgemini projects this shift will create $450 billion in economic value by 2028. We are seeing it in the wild right now.
Like with Devin, right.
Yes, exactly. Look at Devin, the autonomous software engineer built by Cognition. It doesn't just write a snippet of code. It acts as an entire engineering flow.
Yeah.
It plans the architecture, writes the code, spins up a testing environment, spots its own bugs, fixes them, and deploys it autonomously.
And it's not just tech companies either. Look at the mining and metals company, Ladhuden.
Oh, that's a great example.
Yeah, they are saving 2,200 hours a month using agents within Microsoft Copilot. 2,200 hours.
Massive.
That is essentially an entire department's worth of manual labor completely reclaimed just by using agents for complex governance and logistics tracking.
And we are seeing similar transformations in retail, where agents are autonomously managing entire supply chains, monitoring weather patterns, predicting demand spikes, and rerouting inventory autonomously.
That's incredible.
In sales, agents are automatically scoring incoming leads, doing deep background research on the prospect, personalizing the outreach, and even managing the initial back-and-forth negotiations.
And the tools to build these crews are surprisingly accessible now in 2026.
Very much so.
You've got frameworks like CrewAI, which is specifically designed for building these role-based multi-agent teams. You've got AutoGen. There's OpenAI Swarm and their operator tool, which is uniquely built to take actions directly in a web browser.
Right.
And then there's LangGraph, which is heavily mentioned when people talk about maintaining stateful flows.
Yes.
Can you explain what a stateful flow is for the non-engineers listening?
Sure. Think of a stateful flow as giving the AI a persistent short-term memory. Older chatbots suffered from goldfish memory.
Right, they forgot everything.
Every time you hit enter, they forgot what you said 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
But in a complex end-to-end workflow, the orchestrator agent needs to remember the exact state of the project. If the process pauses because it needs a human to approve a budget, the agent needs to wake up 2 days later, remember all the context, know exactly where it left off, and resume. LangGraph provides the architecture to maintain that state indefinitely.
And for the people who aren't developers at all, there are no code platforms like Nexus.ai and Active Pieces where you can literally drag and drop these agent crews together on a visual canvas. I mean, the barrier to entry has completely collapsed.
It really has. The tools are there, and the economic value is proven.
Okay, let's hit the brakes.
Okay.
Because with numbers like $450 billion and zero latency, this is starting to sound like a flawless utopian dream. And if there is one thing we know for sure, it's that enterprise technology is never flawless.
Never.
So let's ground this. What are the immediate friction points? Why is this a headache for companies trying to roll it out today?
The reality check is critical because the roadblocks are massive. The absolute biggest headache right now is integration and data infrastructure.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Well, you have these brilliant, autonomous, probabilistic agents, but you are trying to plug them into legacy enterprise resource systems that were built in, like, 1998.
Oh, right. It's like you can't hire a world-class personal chef and then lock them in a kitchen where the pantry is full of expired ingredients, the stove doesn't work, and the drawers are nailed shut.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Agents need data to reason. But if your company's internal data is siloed across 12 different departments, or if it's unstructured, meaning it's just a mess of PDFs and poorly labeled spreadsheets, the agents will fail.
Yeah.
They cannot orchestrate a flow if they can't access the ingredients. Garbage in, garbage out, no matter how smart the AI is.
Which brings me to a really important question about liability, and I want to walk through the actual logic of this.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's say I manage a retail company. I set up an autonomous agent flow to manage our stock. The agent connects to an API, misreads a trend, hallucinates a demand spike, goes completely rogue, and autonomously orders $10,000 worth of the completely wrong inventory.
Ouch. Yeah.
Who is legally and financially on the hook for that? Is it the software vendor who built the orchestrator? Is it me? How are companies actually handling that liability?
It is the exact question keeping enterprise executives up at night, and it's why Gartner warned that many agentic projects will completely fail due to a lack of governance.
Wow.
And to answer your question, the liability almost entirely falls on the company and the human who deployed the system.
Really? The software vendor takes zero responsibility if their AI hallucinates.
Correct. The tech vendors have airtight terms of service stating their tools are for assistance and final execution is at your own risk.
That's terrifying.
It is. If you hand an autonomous system the API keys to your corporate credit card or your procurement system, you are authorizing its actions. It is functionally no different than handing a corporate card to a junior employee. If they mess up, the company eats the cost.
Wow. So you absolutely cannot just unleash these agents and hope for the best.
No, absolutely not. And this is where we see what we call the echo chamber of bad design.
Oh, what's that?
We talked earlier about how multi-agent systems reduce hallucinations, right?
Yeah.
But if you design the workflow poorly, if you don't give the critic agent the right data, or if you don't implement strict guardrails, the agents might just confidently agree with each other's wrong answers.
Oh, no.
Yeah, the researcher hallucinates the demand spike, the compliance agent says, looks good to me, and the executor buys the sweaters.
A highly efficient, automated disaster.
Exactly.
Which perfectly explains the human element here. I mean, there has to be deep cultural resistance to this. If I'm an employee, I am naturally terrified of this.
Of course.
I don't trust the system not to break things, and I'm deeply afraid of losing control or just straight up losing my job to a crew of bots.
Yeah, the anxiety is real.
Plus, the hidden costs of cleaning up all that legacy data just to get the system working must make the initial return on investment pretty hard to justify.
Oh, absolutely. The short-term cost of implementation, data cleanup, and change management is incredibly steep. You are essentially paying to rebuild the foundation of your house while you are still living in it.
So given all those risks, the data silos, the liability, the fear, the costs, how do we actually implement this safely without blowing up the company?
Right.
If you are a leader listening to this, how do you actually execute? Let's walk through the practical framework.
Okay, so the first thing you have to do is address the workforce culture head-on. Autonomous AI, when deployed correctly, does not replace humans. It redefines roles.
Redefines them.
Yes. The organizations that will lead in this era are not the ones who fire everyone and let bots run the shop. They are the ones that redesign workflows around agents to free humans from repetitive execution.
Got it.
This allows them to focus on strategy, empathy, and complex problem solving.
Okay, so to do that safely, we have a 4-step playbook from the sources. Step 1, start small.
Very small.
You do not try to automate your global supply chain on day 1. You pick a single, well-defined workflow with very low risk, like automate the drafting of an internal weekly status report, not your customer-facing financial transactions.
Correct. Find a contained environment to prove the concept and test the APIs.
Okay.
Then, step 2 directly addresses your $10,000 liability scenario. Keep a human in the loop for critical supervision.
Right, the human in the loop. So the agent does 99% of the heavy lifting. It does the research, the analysis, the drafting, the formatting. But at the very end of the flow, it stops and sends a ping to a human. And the human has to actually look at it and push the final approve button before the order goes out or the email is sent.
Yes, exactly. You leverage the extreme speed of the agent for the execution, but you retain human judgment for the final 1% of risk mitigation.
That's smart.
Over time, as trust builds, you can remove the loop for smaller tasks, but for anything with financial or reputational risk, the human stays.
That makes perfect sense. Step 3 is to invest heavily in governance from day 1.
Absolutely crucial.
You can't treat security as an afterthought here. You have to establish clear rules.
Right.
What internal data is this specific agent allowed to read? What systems is it blocked from touching?
Right.
And how are its decisions being logged so we can audit them later if something goes wrong?
Exactly. Identity and access management for AI agents is going to be a massive industry of its own.
I bet.
And finally, step 4, train and upskill your team. You have to help your employees shift their mental model. Their job is no longer to be the person typing the data into the spreadsheet.
Hearing that framework, it makes me realize there is a profound shift in career trajectories happening right now.
How so?
Well, if you are listening to this, the takeaway isn't to panic about being replaced by software. The takeaway is that you are essentially getting promoted to management.
Ah, I see.
You are moving from being an individual contributor who presses the buttons to a strategic orchestrator whose direct reports happen to be extremely fast, tireless AI agents.
That is a very empowering and honestly accurate way to look at it.
Hmm.
The professionals who thrive in the next decade won't be the ones who try to outwork the agents.
Right.
They will be the ones who manage the heist crew the most effectively. They will be the best at defining the goals and overseeing the quality.
Let's summarize the journey we've taken today. We are witnessing the definitive transition from single-task AI assistants that require constant hand-holding to full end-to-end autonomous crews that perceive their environment, reason probabilistically, proactively use tools, and act.
Exactly.
The productivity gains really eliminating that latency between tasks are very real, and the multi-agent architectures are actually reducing hallucinations by narrowing those context windows.
But it requires intense organizational discipline.
Huge discipline.
You have to clean up your legacy data, enforce strict governance to manage liability, and completely shift your company culture to embrace this new way of working.
So here's our challenge to you today, learner. Look at your own daily workflows. Look at the tasks that just drain your energy.
We all have them.
Identify just one boring, repetitive process. Maybe it's compiling a weekly analytics spreadsheet, sorting through Tier 1 support tickets, or doing initial background research on sales leads.
Yeah.
Think about how you could start orchestrating that task with a small, low-risk, human-in-the-loop agent flow today. Because technology should serve humanity, not the other way around.
It really is about elevating what human beings spend their cognitive energy on.
Absolutely. And that leaves us with a final, slightly mind-bending thought to chew on.
Oh, let's hear it.
If these autonomous multi-agent systems truly handle all the execution, if they do all the researching, the coding, the writing, the analyzing, the purchasing, and our new role as humans is purely to be the orchestrators who set the goals,
Right.
will the ultimate bottleneck of the future simply be human imagination?
Wow.
I mean, if your digital personal chef can cook anything in the world instantly, will we eventually struggle to come up with enough ideas, strategies, and goals fast enough to keep our autonomous crews busy?
That is fascinating.
Something to mull over as you navigate your newly agentic world. Thanks for joining us on this Deep Dive Learner. We'll catch you on the next one.